VacMaster Chef Eric Villegas here. Today's recipe is a showstopper right here from our Kansas City culinary studios. It is a porterhouse steak, cooked sous vide, 8 hours at 55 Celsius or medium rare at 133 degrees. And after it comes out, it gets seared. With SEARED, our new spice line is our wild mushroom roasted garlic rub. The steak, after coming out, gets dried off and then gets heavily dusted, appropriately dusted, tastily dusted, with this wild mushroom roasted garlic rub, then seared in garlic oil, both sides. Ooh. Then a sauce, this guy right here. This sauce is really cool. I developed this sauce to be part of the rub. So there's an ample amount of wild mushroom garlic rub in my steak sauce. But what else goes in there? All sorts of great stuff. Number one, we char jalapenos, onions, and garlic cloves in a dry cast iron skillet to get a nice char on them. Then chop them up, throw them in a bag. And here I'm using the VacMaster bag filler, which is great when you're by yourself. A good amount of ketchup, I like to use organic, and then of course the wild mushroom roasted garlic rub. That's going to give the main flavor profile that I wanted for this steak sauce. And keep in mind, the steak is going to be rubbed with this prior to searing, so it's really important that the flavors go together. And then some more sweetness, and I love using maple sugar. It's just got that wonderful flavor, that wonderful nuance, and especially if it's from Michigan. And then whenever you're doing sweets, I like to add the yin-yang, the counterpoint, something that's got some tartness, some sour. Here we're using fresh lemon juice, easily could be lime juice. And in addition, one of my favorite seasonings is cider vinegar, apple cider vinegar, but raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. This gives big, complex flavors and a wonderful tang. And then some Worcestershire sauce, always a nice addition to any sort of steak sauce, a classic steak combo. And in addition to the Worcestershire sauce, something to give it a little bit more umami, a little bit more mouthfeel, I really love using Marmite. This is a yeast extract. It's kind of difficult to work with. You can see it's kind of really sticky, but once you get it in there, once it melts together, it offers incomparable flavor. And now all we need to do is seal it up. Whenever you're using liquids in a bag, you really want to use a chamber machine. You can try using an edge sealer for this, but it really is a lot of work, more work than you want, and it usually doesn't turn out well. But when you use a chamber machine, it takes care of liquids like no problem. And when it's done, I mean, just take a look at it. Everything is perfectly sealed. The vegetables, those wonderful charred jalapenos and all those flavors in the bag. Now all we need to do is cook it. I'm doing about 85 degrees Celsius or 185 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 2 hours. And you can see I'm agitating the bag just to mix it up a little bit before the actual cooking process. Then I just drop it. And when it's done, there are two things you can do. You can do exactly what I'm doing and just squeeze it right out into a container, or you could puree it if you like to get a smoother texture, but either way, this is a wonderful steak sauce. Creating a sous vide steak is simplicity in itself. All you do is you slam a steak into a bag. It couldn't be any simpler. Here I'm using a wonderful porterhouse steak that I'm simply going to put in the bag. I choose not to pre-season the steaks for this particular application. I generally like my steaks unseasoned. It gives me ultimate flexibility in how I'm going to finish them, and I just put them right in a bag. And then I cook them. I like doing porterhouses, short loins, New York strips, that kind of thing, for approximately 8 hours at my chosen temperature. And my chosen temperature for this particular steak was 55 degrees Celsius, or about 133 degrees Fahrenheit. Before cooking, you want to make sure that you dry the steak off as best as you can for a better crust. You could do it wet, but it takes a little longer to cook that way, and you could consequently overcook your steak. You don't want to do that. And here I'm using the wild mushroom blender. You can see there's a copious amount on there, but there's a reason. It was cooked with nothing on it, and now in a very hot skillet. any lipid of your choice, any oil you'd like to use, any fat. Here I'm using my roasted garlic oil that I made sous vide, but one of the other things I love doing is using beef suet. I mean, it's a steak, right? So why not use steak fat? And as you can see, I'm pressing down on the steak with my tongs, and that's because that center bone there is literally lifting the steak up off the pan. So by pressing down with my tongs, I get a little better sear. Now you just want to go ahead and serve your steak. At this point, you can just slap it on a plate or you can carve it. As you can see now, I'm removing the smaller steak, which is actually the beef tenderloin. And now I'm going down the opposite side of the bone and I'm going to remove the New York strip steak. The Porterhouse is a wonderful steak because it offers both steaks, the New York strip and the tenderloin, in one beautiful, lovely steak. But if you cut that same cut farther down on the cow, you're going to notice the tenderloin get considerably smaller. After it gets to a certain small size, it changes its name from the Porterhouse to the T-bone steak. And now I'm just going to go ahead and slice up the steak for serving. There's two things you really want to think about when you're cooking steak sous vide. The first one is, what do you want? What temperature do you want your steak? Do you like it rare, medium, whatever? You pick that temperature, you set your circulator, and you stay with it. That's going to give you the steak that you want. The second thing is, what type of texture do you want out of that steak? For example, this Porterhouse probably would have been done, had reached core temperature, in about an hour, hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours, depending on the thickness. And that will give you a great steak. But it'll taste like a traditional New York strip / tenderloin combo, a standard Porterhouse, because of the time it's spent in the bath. Now, I cook mine for 8 hours. That's going to make the meat much more tender, much more luscious in the mouth. But that's how I like my short loins cooked. If I left it in for 30 days at that same temperature, I would have ended up with a bag of meat pudding. It would be total mush, but it'd be medium rare total mush. The point is, the temperature will never change after you've set the circulator, but the texture will change with the length of time that the steak stays in the water bath. And that's totally up to you based on your personal preference and the type of cut that you're cooking. And then right before I serve the steak, I like to do a little light dusting one more time with the wild mushroom rub. It just adds that extra punch. And now a beautifully cooked steak dipped in that wonderful steak sauce. This is one truly delicious meal, whether you use a Porterhouse, a New York strip, whatever. Oh, and the flavor, it makes me want to dance, it makes me want to sing. Sous vide steak with wild mushroom rub and my lovely steak sauce.
How was it? Did you love it? Wasn't it amazing? Thank you so mucho for watching. Thank you so much. You are what make it possible. Do you want more? Hit like, hit subscribe on your tablet, on your computer, on your phone. I don't care. I want to see you next time right here at the Fresh Bites channel with me, Eric Villegas. We are cooking.